You are standing in the checkout line, perhaps holding a basket containing the exact same groceries you bought last Tuesday. The cashier scans the final item, and the total flashes on the screen. You freeze for a split second. That familiar set of basic necessities now costs substantially more, perhaps 7 or 8% higher than just 4 months ago. Your salary, however, remains exactly the same as it was 18 months ago.
My name is Robie, and I spend way too much time thinking about the invisible equations that dictate our financial survival. I obsess over the structural friction between stagnant labor income and rapidly inflating capital goods and necessary expenses.
Today, we are talking about the wage-price lag, a brutal, silent phenomenon often masked by carefully curated governmental statistics and quarterly corporate earnings reports. This lag is the core mechanism of vampire costs that relentlessly drain your real liquidity.
It is the subtle financial violence where the instantaneous price spike for gasoline, rice, or education is only addressed by a delayed, often insufficient increase in your take-home pay years down the line. It is a mathematical inevitability in our current system.
This disparity creates a massive structural debt owed by the economy to the worker. You are effectively financing the corporation's margin maintenance by accepting a temporary but persistent reduction in your personal standard of living.
The psychological impact of this mechanism is profound. We call it the erosion anxiety. It is the constant low-level stress of knowing that while your bank balance looks stable, its actual purchasing power is melting away every time you swipe your card.
This lag is not a bug in the system. It is often treated as a feature. Corporate entities swiftly pass material input costs onto the consumer to maintain their gross profit margins instantly within the current fiscal quarter. But raising the average employee's compensation is an operational commitment. It is a fixed, permanent increase in costs that businesses resist until extreme labor shortages or massive union pressure forces their hand, which takes time.
That resistance period is the lag. It is the window where the average person suffers the most financial damage. It is a period of dead equity creation, where your earned income is silently consumed by structural forces beyond your immediate control.
We must understand why the official metrics often lie to us. The Consumer Price Index, or CPI, the headline inflation number, is a statistical average designed to measure a theoretical basket of goods for a generalized population. Your personal inflation rate, however, is likely much higher. If you are a young family prioritizing housing, education, and fresh food, your personal CPI can easily exceed the official figure by several percentage points annually. The official calculation often struggles to capture the true cost of housing, especially rent, or the rapid escalation in non-discretionary costs like healthcare premiums and utility bills, which have low elasticity. You cannot simply choose not to pay them.
Consider the reality of shelter costs. While food prices might fluctuate quarterly, rent increases are usually locked in annually, often increasing 5 to 10% year over year, immediately creating a liquidity trap for those living paycheck to paycheck. This exponential increase in fixed costs means that the small annual raises many workers receive are mathematically insufficient from the moment they are announced. The raise is already eaten by inflation that occurred 12 months prior. It is a slow, methodical bleed. Imagine starting the year with 100 units of purchasing power. If inflation hits 6% and your salary remains flat, you are immediately operating at a deficit of 6 units. Your raise of 3% the following year only gets you halfway back. You are always playing catch-up, always running behind the inflationary curve. This chronic delay ensures that the benefits of productivity gains flow primarily to capital owners and not to the actual labor force generating the output.
This wage-price lag is fundamentally an issue of pricing power. Corporations have excellent pricing power because they can set the cost of their goods and services. Individual employees often have very weak pricing power over their own labor. To gain pricing power, you must possess skills that are scarce, specialized, or critical. If your role is easily replaceable or commoditized, the system dictates that your wages will remain stubbornly sticky in the face of rising inflation. This sticky wage phenomenon is the psychological burden we feel acutely. We see evidence of inflation everywhere, from the price of morning coffee to the cost of a plane ticket home. Yet our paycheck behaves as if the world is deflationary. The system is designed to incentivize corporations to delay raises as long as possible. A dollar saved on labor is a dollar directly added to the bottom line, boosting short-term shareholder value and executive compensation metrics.
We are seeing a historical anomaly play out, where global supply chain disruptions meet highly flexible corporate pricing strategies. The result is rapid, front-loaded inflation hitting consumers before labor markets can react meaningfully.
The critical term to remember is real income. It is not the number printed on your pay stub, but how much that number can actually buy. The wage price lag guarantees that your nominal income rises, but your real income often declines or stagnates for long periods. This lag is why many feel they are working harder just to stay in the same place. They are. The treadmill is speeding up, but the compensation for running on it is only adjusted years after the speed increase has been applied. Let us explore the mathematics of the lost opportunity. If inflation is 5% and your salary only increases by 2%, after 2 years, you have lost 8% of real purchasing power during that lag period. That 8% is dead equity.
That 8% should have been invested, compounding, and building generational wealth. Instead, it was transferred silently into the balance sheets of the companies that sold you necessities, or simply disappeared into the structural friction of the economy.
The cumulative effect of this wage price lag over a decade is staggering. Even a 2% annual shortfall in wage adjustments versus inflation can decimate long-term savings potential and drastically delay retirement timelines.
The feeling of futility that accompanies this realization is what makes the wage price lag so destructive to morale. It reinforces the belief that the system is rigged, because mathematically speaking, in this specific dynamic, it actually is. The structural trap is set when you rely entirely on a single income stream that lacks inflation protection or automatic indexing. Most W-2 salary positions are structurally vulnerable to this insidious delay mechanism. To fight this, you must adopt the mentality of an inflation hedge manager for your own household budget. You must minimize exposure to assets that are consumed by the lag and maximize your exposure to assets that benefit from rapid price increases.
The first actionable step is radical salary negotiation, consistently and aggressively. You must shift from annual reviews focused on performance to quarterly or biannual reviews focused strictly on market compensation parity and inflation adjustment.
Do not wait for your employer to initiate the conversation about inflation. By the time they do, you are already months behind. You must bring the data regarding sector-specific cost increases to the table proactively. The second defense mechanism is skill acquisition focused on scarcity. Invest in becoming indispensable in a niche area that requires advanced certification or deep specialized knowledge. Scarcity generates pricing power.
A highly scarce individual can demand immediate indexing of their compensation to prevailing economic conditions, effectively bypassing the sticky wage phenomenon that plagues the rest of the workforce.
The third and most crucial defense is diversification of income sources, specifically those that are either passive or those that inherently index to inflation. This means reducing reliance on labor for basic needs.
If your capital works for you through investment vehicles that inherently hedge against inflation, such as real assets, real estate, or commodities, you are shielded from the total burden of the wage price lag.
Cash holdings and investments yielding returns below the true inflation rate are what I call financial sinks. They are actively consuming your wealth in the current environment because they are losing the race against price increases.
The moment you realize that your savings account is essentially donating money to the inflationary machine is the moment you gain clarity on the urgency of finding alternative growth strategies that index faster than your paycheck.
Real estate, for example, often provides a robust inflation hedge. As the cost of materials and labor increases, the value of the underlying physical asset rises, and rent payments tend to adjust much quicker than standard W-2 wages.
This is the key to escaping the lag, generating wealth through mechanisms that react to inflation simultaneously, rather than waiting for bureaucratic or corporate salary cycles to catch up years later. You need instant indexing.
The systemic villain here is the combination of weak labor organization, low job mobility, and corporate prioritization of short-term quarterly results over long-term employee stability. This triple threat creates the perfect environment for the lag to thrive.
Imagine if every employment contract contained a non-negotiable clause stating that compensation must be automatically adjusted biannually based on a localized, sector-specific inflation metric, not the generalized CPI. This level of financial sanity would instantly rebalance the power dynamics. It would force corporations to either manage costs internally more efficiently or accept that their labor expenses must reflect the true cost of living they are passing on to consumers.
But we do not operate in a world of such structural fairness. Therefore, the burden falls on the individual to create their own personalized inflation hedge strategy that transcends the traditional employment model.
We must recognize that the biggest cost associated with the wage price lag is the loss of time. Time that could have been used for compounding returns is instead consumed by simply maintaining the same relative economic position. This lost compounding is the difference between an early, comfortable retirement and spending an extra decade in the workforce just to compensate for the silent theft perpetrated by structural inflation and sticky wages.
Understanding this invisible equation is step one. Step two is executing an active defense. This involves rigorous budgeting that differentiates between truly necessary non-elastic costs and discretionary spending that can be pruned during high inflation cycles. Crucially, never accept the explanation that your delayed raise is solely due to company performance. Inflation is a macroeconomic factor, and if the company is raising its prices to consumers, it must adjust its input costs, which includes your compensation. Challenge the narrative. If the price of their product has increased by 10% this year, why has the price of your labor only increased by 2%? This disparity is where the dead equity is created and extracted from your household. The psychological warfare waged by the lag aims to normalize the feeling of constant financial depletion. It convinces us that perpetual financial struggle is a personal failure, when in reality, it is a mathematical outcome of systemic flaws. The escape path requires treating your career not as a job, but as a portfolio of financial assets that must be managed, optimized, and aggressively priced according to prevailing market conditions, not historical precedent.
This is why I preach the necessity of financial literacy that delves beneath the surface. We must look past the headline numbers and analyze the differential inflation rates affecting the precise goods we consume and the services we rely upon.
The cost of raising children, for instance, often tracks inflation at a higher rate due to the rapid escalation in costs for childcare and education. If your salary does not keep pace with the localized child raising index, you are falling behind rapidly.
This is the hidden tax on family formation and stability imposed by the wage price lag. It forces families to deploy every available resource just to tread water against costs that are scaling exponentially faster than their income.
We must demand transparency regarding the metrics used for annual adjustments. If your employer uses CPI for wage adjustment, understand that they are implicitly saving money because your actual cost of living is almost certainly higher.
True financial sanity comes from rejecting the passive acceptance of the lag. It means demanding real compensation adjustments that match the true purchasing power erosion, ensuring that your nominal income reflects your real contribution. This fight is fundamentally about reclaiming the liquidity that is rightfully yours. It is about converting dead equity back into living, compounding capital that can actually secure your future independence and freedom. The architecture of your life must be built to withstand the pressure of structural inflation and the predictable corporate delay tactics inherent in the wage price lag. Adopt diversification and aggressively pursue scarcity value. Remember, the greatest financial risk is not a market crash, but the slow, silent death of purchasing power while your salary remains stagnant. This is the invisible equation that must be solved for personal financial freedom.
Do not let the system trick you into financing its stability through your instability.
Take control of your compensation narrative and demand immediate parity with the inflationary reality you face every day at the grocery store.
The power lies in collective awareness and individual action. Understand the lag, identify the vampire costs, and build a fortress of assets that index instantly to the reality of the market. This is the blueprint for escaping the treadmill.
If you found this analysis of the wage price lag and debt equity illuminating, and if you believe that the invisible equations of finance should be exposed for all to see, then I have a simple request for you.
Smash that like button on this video right now to help this message escape the algorithmic oppression that seeks to bury complex truths.
Subscribe for more financial sanity and deep dives into the systemic traps that steal your wealth. Let us continue to analyze and dismantle the structures of economic injustice together.